with a storyboard that looks similar to yours. You had the 5 buttons set up here, you had an image at the top, and you want it to be where it was adaptable. So if you look, I can change my viewer to different phones. I can go down to SE, which is like that. SE is a little bit different. If you notice, one on the left's a little messed up because the constraints are a little different on that. So the one on the right is actually what I'm going to show you how to make right quick. But you can go to different phones, and when you switch, it stays right there. If I take it to a iPad, it's also going to stay in the center. Now you may be wondering why the buttons didn't get bigger. It's because when you set them up in this layout where you have a 2, 1, 2 like that, it's a little more difficult to get your constraints on your center button to where the buttons will actually change with the screen size. And I figure, if we're being honest, most people are going to view this on their phone, so making this to where it's functional on an iPad and still looks nice is more important than making it to where the buttons actually change sizes. Plus, this is a way easier way of doing it. This is something we can look at later if you wanted to. Alright, so I'm going to go back down to an iPhone 8 because it's really the smallest size phone on the market. There's still some 7s and 6s out there, but relatively they're close to the 8. So we're going to work out of the iPhone 8 for the time being. We can just go ahead and I'll get rid of that so you can ignore it. And we're going to work off of this. So obviously I already have my constraints set, and you should probably have some constraints set on yours too. But we're going to start over from scratch from this. So click at the top and make sure that View Controller is selected right there. And when you do, I want you to go down. And I don't know which version of Xcode you're working out of. Mine's a later version I've recently updated. But once you do that, go down and click your, I think it's a constraints auto layout issue, like it says resolve auto layout issue. Click that and clear constraints. And that's going to clear all the constraints on the whole screen. Okay. So when I look over here at this, mine looks a little different because I have all mine set up. But basically what I'm going to do is I am going to delete everything. You don't have to. I'm going to delete all my stuff so you can watch me build this. I'm going to leave the image view because there's no need in changing the image view. But I'm going to start with this layout. So the first thing I want to do is I want to drag in a label. Alright, I'm just going to drag a label in. I'm going to find the center. When I get my centers crossed up like that, I'm going to drop it. And I'm going to go back down here to my align editor. I click that, and I want it aligned horizontally and vertically. I'm going to add those 2 constraints. Okay, so it should look something like that. So if you notice, it still says label in the middle. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to get rid of that. And you're not even going to know that's there, okay? And we're not going to worry about that right now. Just know that we have put it there, and we're going to use it for something later, okay? So the next thing we're going to do is we want to add our buttons. All right, so I'm going to drag my button down, and I'm going to get it kind of put where I want. I can move them all in a minute if I want to. I'm going to change the size of them a little bit. I don't know what size your buttons are. You don't have to follow me on the size thing. I just want them to where you can see them. That way you can understand what I'm trying to do here. So I'm going to make my buttons 120 by 70. And now I have my buttons. Okay. I have that button. I'm going to place it there for time being. And I'm just pushing Command D on my keyboard to duplicate my buttons a few times, because I'm kind of lazy and I didn't really want to do them all at once. Let's see, drop him there. And basically I'm just trying to recreate your setup just a little bit. Put him here. And I'm just trying to make it kind of like you did, make it look nice in relation to my image and also kind of look symmetrical. I don't like that the background's clear, so I'm going to go ahead and change the background to all my buttons right quick just so they're easier to see, and that way you can kind of see what's happening to the size of them a little better. Go down. Just change all my buttons. Alright, so now I have all my buttons. They look like they're off a little bit. I think this one might be a little bit off. There we go. Still looks a little off to me, but we'll roll with it for right now. Alright, so we have that. Computer's lagging a little bit this morning. It's early. So I got my buttons close to where I want them. I got a little spinny wheel. Alright, so now we're going to set some constraints because I have some buttons, I have my image, I have my screen kind of looking like yours. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my image constraints. And I'm going to click my image just to select it. And then over here in the content mode, I'm going to make sure that says aspect fill. So here I want aspect fill. And what that's going to do is as my screen changes sizes and my constraints move my image, it's going to change the aspect ratio to fill the screen, but also not get unproportional, okay? So that's pretty important that you do that, okay? So next thing you want to do is inside here, you want to click control drag, and you want to go aspect ratio, okay? So what that's going to do is we're fixing to set constraints for the sides and the top, and it's going to stretch the sides and top as it moves, but the bottom's going to be left alone to where it can move to fill as far as the aspect ratio is concerned. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go down here to our add new constraints, and we want these to say 0. If they don't say 0, you can click and you can actually just go 0, tab, 0, and go up here and 0, and you're going to notice that these red lines are highlighted. You want to leave the bottom one alone and leave it dots. You don't even want to click in this box. If you do accidentally click in the box, click the red dot like this and it unhighlights it, okay? But we want these 3 up top highlighted. Once you do that, click add constraints. Alright, so we can test this now if we want to, and if we want to, we can go from our 8 to our iPhone or our iPad, because that makes it look, you know, kind of what it's going to do. The buttons are going to act crazy. That's okay. We know the buttons are going to act crazy, but see, our image stayed the same. It kind of changed a little bit as far as the height of it, but it's no big deal. That's what we wanted it to do. So I'm going to go back to the iPhone 8. My computer's running a little bit slow, so have to bear with me a little bit. Okay, so, and if you notice, it went right back down. So you can play around if you want to and go to any of these viewers right here, and you can try the different iPads, iPhones, combinations, or whatever. But you want to work out of the 8, okay? Because like I said, the 8's the smaller of the screens. Not many people have the SEs, anything earlier than 8. 8's kind of where we're at. But don't work out of 8 Plus because it's slightly larger, and when you go down to an 8, it's going to be a little bit wonky, okay? So I still have my screen set up the way I want to, and now we're going to set the constraints on our buttons, okay? So on each button, and this is a little bit tedious, but you can't select all the buttons and do this, you have to do them one at a time. You're going to control drag each button, and you're going to set your width and height. So I'm just control dragging in the button. Don't pull off the button when you control drag. Stay inside your button and height. And I'm going to do that for all 5 of my buttons. If I had more time, I would fast forward through all this for you and kind of deal with the fact that my computer's acting a little laggy. But I was trying to get this to you before class this morning, so we'll see how it goes. Setting width and height on every one of them. And what this is going to do is it's going to say no matter what changes I make to my screen, I want my buttons to stay the same. If you go the aspect ratio route and click it, there is a way to make that work. I'm not going through all that today, but what happens is that will actually set for it to change the size of your button as your screen changes, which is fine. The only problem is that center button right here. Way we're fixing to constrain these, it's going to make it about 4 times bigger than these other 4 buttons when it does change screen size, okay? And so we don't really want that, all right? So we have control drag those the way we want them, and now what we're going to do is we're going to use something called a stack view. I don't know if you've ever used that before, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my 2 buttons. So you're going to click button 1 and hold shift, click the next button. Alright, you're going to select 2 buttons, the top 2 first, go over here to the very far right to embed in, and on the bottom of the embed in view, you're going to click stack view, okay? And that's going to make your buttons look like that. Now, if you set your constraints wrong here, it could make your buttons look way different. But we've got to do something else first. So go over here to this document outline, and make sure that you have your stack view selected. We want to do this one at a time because it gets confusing once you get all 4 stack views in. But click this first stack view you made, go to alignment, click center, and then in distribution, fill equally. Because what will happen is if you don't fill this equally, sometimes, depending on your constraints, one button may get like about 60% bigger than the other one because it's going to think one has a priority over the other, and it's going to fill them differently. So now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to stack view the rest of them, and we're going to set those properties. So click your center button, just the center button alone, stack view it, because they all have the same thing. Like I said, we want to do the same thing. We want to say, click it, center, fill equally. That's mainly just because we don't want it to do something kind of crazy on us. Click our last 2 buttons, and stack view. And we want to, it's taking a minute to get there. There we go. Center, fill equally. Now, I will say it is important to do all these in the order I'm doing them. So if you had constraints or whatever set, it is important that you remember that if you need to delete all those constraints and start over, because if you started from the constraints you had to here, there's no guarantees this is going to work. Okay, it's right here, and we're ready to go on to our next step. What we're going to do is we're going to select all 3 stack views, go down to embed in, set them in a stack view themselves, and we're going to finish by setting our last constraints. I'm going to move this back over to center because that's where I want it, if my computer agrees. Okay. Once I do that, I've got to set 2 more constraints, and then we are done. That center stack view, I'm going to select it, drag to my label in my document outline, set vertical spacing. Then I'm going to click my overall stack view, go to my alignment constraints, horizontally in container, and now I have that. And now I should be able to view this in any size, and it will be just about where I want it. I said it's going to look slightly different in iPads, and that's fine. We can live with that. But it looks good in just about every phone size. So if I switch around down here, and you don't have to build this every time in a simulator, because you can actually just view it in the different templates down here. That's why I just work out it. Simulators take a lot of memory to run, so it's easier just to view out of this. If it looks good here, it looks good there. It just won't need any functionality, so remember that. But anyways, I hope this helps you, and good luck, guys. If you need anything else, let me know, and I will be more than happy to Zoom with you if this doesn't help. But I just know y'all's time was a little bit tight, and so I thought this might help y'all out. All right, thank y'all.